Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary with a knife video, and this is going to be a comparison between two knives that have some similarity. You know, both of these are sort of marketed as more combat design blades. Certainly they're going to appeal to someone who wants something a little more substantial than your average ADC. You know, maybe you've got a Spyderco Tenacious or a Kershaw Blur or something and you want something a little bigger, a little more substantial. Not that I would say both of these necessarily fit that, but both of them are marketed as more combat ready, hard use, you know, super tough kind of blades, tactical, even though I don't like that particular word. It could be applied to these two knives. And so I wanted to, and also, by the way, the price point on these is similar. Now, this is the AUS 8 version, and that's why it compares. Okay, if you step up to the CTS XHP Recon one, then the price point is not quite as equal, okay? So I will say that to kind of start off. Now the other thing I want to say is probably some of you watching would say, you know, shouldn't you be comparing the Triden Elite to something like the Cold Steel Swift because of the assist? Well, I would say no, and here's the reasons why. So the Swift is really in a kind of a different category. You're over $100 for this. The steel is CTS XHP, which is almost a super steel. You know, you're just, you know, the refinement is very good. This would be more comparable to, say, a Benchmade Barrage or something that's a little more in that next level of cost and refinement. This knife, you know, coming in at, I don't know, what is it, $45 to $55, doesn't really compare well to this. However, it does compare fairly well to this because the prices are a little more similar, the materials are very similar to both AUS 8 blades. And so because of that, you know, and again, I think they're both marketed to someone who wants something a little more substantial and doesn't, you know, isn't quite in the market for something like the Swift or the Barrage or whatever. So how do these two stack up to each other? And one of the things we want to think about just a little bit is there are some sort of extra features on this, and are those extra features sort of put it over the top and say, yeah, this is the way you should go, or are you better off with something a little more plain Jane but very practical, okay? And so we'll kind of have that discussion as we go along. Now, size and weight on these is the first thing we want to get to, and I will try to sort of declare a winner in each category and then give an overall impressions at the end, okay? So size and weight on the Recon 1, 9¼ inches, it's almost 4 inches, 3 15/16 on the blade length, okay? And that's kind of common. These, you know, I've seen a couple other videos where people commented on it doesn't quite make 4 inches. The handle on this one is 5 3/8. And it's just a little more than 5 3/8, okay, like 5 7/16. And the weight is 5.1 ounces, so just over 5 ounces for a very large knife with basically a 4-inch blade, okay? Not bad at all. And I will say, if you're carrying this in pocket, it's about 2 inches thick and it's about ½ an inch this dimension. So it's fairly substantial in pocket, but it's not the end of the world. And I have knives that are heavier and bulkier, both. Now, coming to the Triden Elite, size and weight on this one, you've got 8½ inches total. Now, a lot of websites say 8 3/4, but that's because there's a 1/4 inch of pocket clip extending out here. But that doesn't give you, like, you can't hold on to it or anything like that. So in my mind, you can't really count that as part of the length of the knife. It's not part of the handle, it's not part of the blade. It's not contributing anything to the ergonomics or anything like that. Doesn't give you more reach, nothing like that. So I'm going to call this 8½ inches. The blade on this is 3 11/16, so just over 3 5/8. Okay, handle is 4 3/4 inches. 4 3/4 inches. Again, that's not counting the pocket clip that extends past. Now, here's where this really does well. The thickness is, again, ½ an inch. Now, you can see that this knife is smaller when folded. And here's where this knife really, really excels. This knife weighs in at 3.8 ounces, okay? 3.8 ounces is really, really good for a knife of this size. So I will say, when it comes to size and weight, when you consider how much blade you're getting, how much knife you're getting, for the amount of weight you're carrying, for the amount of size that you're taking up in pocket, or the amount of space you're taking up in your pocket, I think for size and weight, we've got to say the Triden Elite does really well. So we're going to call it the winner in the size and weight category. Now, moving on down to the blade. Cold Steel Recon 1. This is the spear point version. It does have a hollow ground blade. Normally these come with a black coating. Nowadays, if you buy one in the upgraded steel, that coating is very tough and durable. This is from the old days where Cold Steel's coating just wore off so easily, and so I removed it completely and put a sort of satin finish on the flats and left the stone wash on the swedge and on the primary bevel. Hollow grind, very, very practical blade shape. Nice belly here for sort of slashing or detailed cutting or any kind of skinning task. All right, and I have gutted a few fish with this and it works really well. Not ideal, it's not a fillet knife, but I was able to make do. So, very utilitarian, very tough, very reliable. Edge holding is the main area that this blade really suffers. It just is only so-so when it comes to edge holding. If you go through a bunch of boxes with this, you're probably going to need to sharpen it after. It tends to lose that razor sharp edge fairly easily. Now, moving over to the blade on the SOG, okay? The blade here is a clip point blade. It doesn't look like a clip point blade exactly because the clip starts way back here, but it is a clip point, recurve, and a very deep hollow grind. Okay, I love the grind on this knife. I love the satin finish. I do prefer the satin on this to the stone wash. Now, let me say this. The Aussate steel on the Triden Elite is done better. I don't know if it's the heat treatment, if it's something else that SOG does, if it's the edge geometry, whatever. All the SOGs that I have in Aussate 8 perform exceptionally well, better than other blades in the same steel. Okay, they just do. So, I've got to give blade design to SOG. I like the recurve. I'm a little bit biased there. I tend to favor recurve blades. I like the extra belly out toward the front. I love that very thin edge grind, and it is thinner behind the edge than the Recon 1 is. And again, that's something I really, really like. So, for all of those reasons, edge retention, edge geometry, recurve, satin finish, I think the blade design on the SOG is superior to the blade on the Recon 1. Okay, not that the Recon 1 blade is bad, I actually really like it, but it's just not quite as good as the SOG. Now, what about lockup and deployment? That's what we always talk about next. The Recon 1 is the triad lock. So, you're not going to get a lock that's stronger. Okay, I can flick this out pretty quickly if I need to. Sorry, I can't, of course on camera I can't do it, but in normal use I have never had a problem flicking this knife out. I don't know why I'm having an issue today, but that's okay. You'll have to take my word for it. But anyway, the blade opens fast enough. The lock is extremely solid, and I will say that Cold Steel seems to have even improved their fit and finish and their tolerances to a higher degree yet, so that if you buy a newer Cold Steel from 2015, you'll find, at least in my experience, they are even smoother than they were before. Deployment on the Triden Elite is of course very fast because it's an assisted knife. They both deploy via thumb stud and that's it. It does have, the lock on this is the arc actuator lock, I believe they call it. And I'm not a fan of this lock, okay? I'm sure it's strong enough. I'm not worried about the blade closing on my fingers. However, it does have a little bit of up and down play, and I've never seen a SOG with this actuator lock that doesn't have blade play. So I'm not a fan of it for that reason. Inside, I've seen the construction. I've had a couple of these apart, and it's kind of Mickey Mouse, okay? I'm just not a fan of that lock in general. So, lockup and deployment by a long shot goes to the Recon 1. Moving on, we've talked about the size and weight, we've talked about the blade, we've talked about lockup and deployment. What about the handle? Time to switch back to the Recon 1. We've been doing it first every time, so we'll stick with that. We have two very big, very solid slabs of G10 here. Very, very comfortable in hand. Very, very grippy. Okay, that textured G10 is extremely rough and really grabs a hold of you. So there's no issue in terms of retention on this blade. I do like the option of being able to move your hand to different spots, okay? and it is reversible. It's tip up, but you can do right side or left side carry. So again, that's pretty nice. So that's the handle on the Recon 1. Lanyard hole is fine. On the Trident, you have FRN, which is not as high quality as G10, not as durable as G10, but still very tough. And it has these rubber inserts for grip. Now, the rubber inserts I really like. In fact, I like them better than the grip on the G10. The jimping on this is good enough, certainly comfortable. And the retention is good, maybe not quite as good because of that nice deep choil on the front of the Recon 1 you can see there. Okay, not as much of a choil on this. The other thing, this has a couple of little features. Oh, by the way, I should have talked about the fact that you can lock the Triden Elite so that it can't open. Kind of a silly feature if you ask me, but I just never use it, and it never accidentally gets actuated on me, at least fairly rarely, let's put it that way. Now, sticking back to our handle discussion, this handle does have a carbide glass breaker and a cord cutter. Now the cord cutter doesn't work that well, so I'm going to kind of leave it out. The glass breaker is fairly nice. Just remember, if you ever need to break a car window, you got to hit it in the corners. Okay, especially a bottom corner is going to work better. So if you're going to use this, you're either going to have to reach out and catch that front corner of the window, or get back here and use the back. Likely the window will break. It's actually pretty easy to break a car window if you hit it in the corner, as I'm describing right now. But do I find that this just puts this knife over the top? Not really, and that's because, number one, I always have a rescue me with me when I'm in a vehicle. Number two, there is always the danger of when you're swinging this thing, you're going to swing your hand through a window. Okay, so there's a little bit of danger of cutting yourself. If you're going to do that, just take some precautions. Okay, put your winter coat on, put a glove on, whatever, cover up your hand, cover up your face and eyes as well. When we're breaking glass with the fire department, we cover the victim or ask them to cover themselves up before we break the glass. All right, so not a bad practice to get into if you ever had to break it yourself. Now, so handles on these two, I've got to give it to the Recon 1. And the reason is, even though there are a couple features I like on this, the Recon 1 is much more versatile. You can take at least 3 different grips on this, and that's in the standard sort of blade front type of configuration. That allows me to have a very large knife, but to use it with the detail and care of a very small knife, okay? So it's really, really versatile, and I've got to give that portion. The other thing is just a little more subjective. If I squeeze these two with all my might, this one is very confidence inspiring. It just feels like, hey, I'm really holding onto the knife tight. This one starts to bend and flex, and it just makes you go, it doesn't feel that strong. I'm sure it is strong, and that's been demonstrated on other knives. If you remember the Griptilian, people complain about that handle. It's been demonstrated to be really strong, okay? You're not going to break it, but it just feels like you could. All right, so how do I take these sort of as an overall knife? Well, this I would say is very strong, very capable at an extremely reasonable price. You know, if you're looking for a hard use, heavy duty folder, it's really, really hard to beat a number of cold steels, but especially the Recon 1. If you're looking for something that's large, but relatively lightweight, and you're mostly going to be doing EDC tasks with it, I think the Trident is fine. If you do get one like mine that has up and down blade play, you can send it back to SOG, and hopefully they'll fix it or at least lessen it. I haven't sent this one back yet, but I will. And so you are taking that risk, but the lock on this is just a fail. These knives should have the actual arc lock, and that would make a lot of difference. So how do I compare these two? The one that I would recommend as being most practical, most reliable, would certainly be the Recon 1. However, I don't think that the SOG is a bad knife. It just doesn't feel like, for what you're spending, it does all the things that it needs to do. Okay, so there you go, guys. That's how these two compare. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know of other comparisons you might be interested in. I do have a couple of knives. I may do a comparison between this knife and the Recon 1 or some other cold steel. and I may compare this knife with some other SOGs as well. So